Rich Durrani with TMC. Thanks for watching. We're in Boston this week speaking with a number of companies in the area. We've got Ashu Vermani on the program. He's the VP of Products and Go-to-Market at Comverse. And Ashu, welcome.
Thank you, Rich.
So I figure we start at the top. I mean, I've known your company for decades, but give us an overview.
So Comverse is at an interesting point. We are helping a lot of our CSPs, communication service provider customers, transform themselves into becoming what we define as digital lifestyle providers.
So you now have a business unit, right? From what I've learned, focused on digital lifestyle. What does that business unit do?
So if you think about sort of 3G networks, go back yesteryear, and if you think about the value-added services layer on top of it, that was what Comverse took leadership in. This is 10, 15 years ago. So over 2 decades, we've had leadership in the VAS world. As we move forward to 4G networks, the VAS space itself is being reinvented. And the new word for that is digital services, where we are helping our service provider customers take a more active part in the digital lifestyle of their subscribers. And that whole transformation is the charter of this business unit.
Okay, and so how do you help your carrier customers provide digital lifestyle services? And if I may, please give a few examples as well, how that works.
Absolutely.
I know that's what we mean by digital lifestyle.
Absolutely. So a very simple example would be, today's digital subscriber, they're using a multitude of devices, right? And, if you look at the average stats, typical household has about 2.5 times more digital endpoints than they have SIM-based endpoints. And yet, if you look at the traditional VAS services from the carrier, they only seem to touch the subscribers on about a third or a quarter of the endpoints they have. One nice way for the SP to take a greater part in the value chain would be to modernize their offering and reach their subscribers on the screen they're holding at this point. My own family, we have 14 different endpoints between Kindles and iPads and touches and IP-based TVs. And yet my SP only touches my family over 3 SIM-based devices. So taking part in my digital lifestyle would mean that my carrier is present more often, right?
So maybe a per month charge or something like that to allow you to extend your messaging to all devices.
Maybe a per month charge, or maybe monetization completely differently, where they offer that service because that is what today's digital subscriber expects. But then they monetize it some other way. Perhaps they monetize using the enterprises. And monetize it on the enterprise side, but make it free for the consumer. Another example of a digital lifestyle service would be, enriched communications. Today, the subscriber seems to go through 5 or 6 other silos. We use Viber for some cases. I use Skype in some other cases. I use FaceTime. I use a combination of services. Whereas now with new technology and an IP-connected network, I should be able to do that right off the bat with my SP directly. And I think that's the uplifting of the experience to an enriched communication suite, what we call ECS. That's something my SP could provide me as well. So these are all examples of taking an offering that has existed, but it's existed sort of in a legacy world. It's non-differentiated, it's non-segmented, it's not multi-device, it's not IP-enabled. And turning those offerings and moving them forward to the 4G LTE era. And that's what we call the modernization, or going from VAS 1.0 to VAS 2.0.
And what are the steps that you help the carrier with to get to 2.0?
So we have, over the last year or so, we have worked with a lot of our customers, 25 of large and small customers, and we have come up with a 4-step plan in order to help them translate or transform themselves into digital lifestyle providers. We call these steps simplify, modernize, differentiate, and monetize. Simplify is about taking costs out of the system. Because 10 years ago, these applications were making money. Today, these are cost centers, so to speak. And we do simplification in 2 ways: by product convergence, which is you run multiple products, SMS, MMS, voicemail, who called, USSD, all of that through a virtualized offer. So the product becomes simpler. And the second way we do it is network convergence. So if you think about a large carrier like DT or Vodafone, they have 15 opcos, 20 opcos. Instead of running it in all those countries, they could run it in the cloud at one active, one backup site, and make every opco a tenant of these services, because these services have a rather uniform experience. So that's product convergence and network convergence. So that's simplification. You take cost out of the system and use that money to spend. Second step is modernization. We already know, our customers already know how to reach the customer on a SIM-based device. How about extending that same offering to every IP-based endpoint? So modernization is really extending the reach. And that helps them increase their addressable market by another 2 to 2.5 times. Step 3 is differentiate, where we are talking about uplifting that experience using technologies like presence, multi-party group conversations like WebRTC, and rich communications, to take their basic vanilla experience and make it ready for today's digital age. And step 4 is monetize, where we think some of the early stuff is really table stakes. They have to do it to stay competitive. Step 4 is where they can do two-sided monetization, whether you're zero rating, customer support, WebRTC interactions. Imagine if I was a Nikon or a Canon and I wanted my customers to have video support on technical issues. But consumers will still be afraid to adopt that data because they wouldn't know how much video was being consumed, right? Imagine if Nikon or Canon were to say, as long as you came to my customer support site, any interaction that you did was free, was zero rated. And the SP would charge me as an enterprise and zero rate the subscriber. The other step in monetize...
So it's like toll-free web...
It's like toll-free data or toll-free WebRTC or toll-free web access, if you think about it that way. Yes, absolutely. And another way is what we believe is API-fication, if there is such a word, of the carrier network. By allowing their network capabilities to be exposed to third-party developers and an entire ecosystem, we think the SP can charge by the dip for functionality or reachability information and not monetize the end user. So beginnings of a two-sided monetization model.
Sorry, go ahead.
So just to conclude, the 4 steps: simplify, modernize, differentiate, and monetize. We think that's a good prescription for a service provider to transform themselves.
So your company is really well known in the messaging space, and messaging is evolving, and I'm curious, how do you see yourself playing in that space?
So contrary to a lot of people who might think that messaging is on the decline, we have a contrarian view of this. We think it's the nature of messaging that will change. Today, predominantly, the messaging is P2P or person to person, with a little bit of A2P or application to person. What happens in this next age of sensors and Internet of Things is that there is a huge explosion in the number of messages that are created between, my Nest thermostat talking to my utility company, or my Mercedes talking to my home when I am about to reach my home. So there are these new examples of sensor-to-sensor communication.
And I just want to pause you there. That's an actual use case where when your Mercedes gets within a certain distance of your radius of your home, your thermostat turns on.
That's interesting because, recently Nest made a deal with Mercedes-Benz so that when the car is in the proximity of the subscriber's home, they can message the home to do some sort of a home automation in advance of the subscriber reaching their home. So yes, these kinds of examples are soon becoming reality. But the amount of messaging explosion that happens because sensors talking to sensors is a far bigger number than humans talking to humans. So we think the ratio of P2P messaging probably becomes 5 to 10% of the overall pie.
Now, RCS was something we heard a lot about, and then we heard less about, and then now we're hearing a little more about. Does that have any play in the messaging world that you see?
It absolutely does. So you're right on the money, by the way, on the disenchantment with RCS, and now there is a resurgence of RCS. And the way we think about RCS is, actually, if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, most of the operators were thinking about making a business case on selling the service themselves. And they were competing with free. And it's very hard to compete with free because that's the experience the user was getting outside of the SP network, and which is why there was a fundamental problem with building the business case that way. One of the things Comverse did was in August of this year, we acquired a company called Solimus from Spain. And part of the reason is because we liked their approach on monetization of RCS. Again, the thesis is try not to monetize the subscriber-to-subscriber interaction, because that experience is now table stakes. It has to be an enriched experience. On the other hand, there is a lot of intelligence in the data being collected. So one of the technologies we bring to the table is a multi-content store that uses a Hadoop-based database. Now, aggregate of that data on what is being exchanged between people is of a lot of value that an SP could monetize from the northbound side. API, creating an API gateway where they're allowing third-party developers to interact with consumers. So the A to P side of rich communications, that's monetizable. And there are use cases where banks and transit authorities and a variety of other enterprises will be willing to pay to have an enriched number so they can have a rich communication with their customers.
So there was an article on one of TMCNet's communities a while back on WebRTC replacing Vultee, and I shared it on my social networks, and it sparked a conversation on, I think, maybe LinkedIn, among people who said that these are different technologies and one will not replace the other. I'm curious regarding RCS and WebRTC. I mean, how do you see WebRTC playing in the world where technology comes from the carrier, but now we've got this over-the-top technology? What's going to happen?
So our view is that these two technologies complement each other very nicely. This was the second product that we picked up as part of our acquisition of Solimus. Here is the deal. If you think of RCS as the vanilla version, it contemplates 8 or 9 use cases, but it internally becomes a silo itself, right? Because you have to have an RCS endpoint, I have to have an RCS endpoint for us to enjoy that full experience. One of the things Comverse can do intelligently is on the advanced devices side, IP-connected tablets, IP-connected endpoints, we can use WebRTC to extend the RCS experience to devices that may not have a native client or a built-in client. So now the universe explodes for RCS, and it helps adoption. On the legacy side, we can degrade or provide an experience using vanilla SMS, vanilla MMS, vanilla voice technologies. So we are increasing the whole spectrum of RCS usage, and on both legacy side as well as on the advanced side. To your question, WebRTC and RCS, we see them as complementary. We see WebRTC as a way to leverage and expand that universe of RCS.
So a while back I asked you about how you can help carriers become these digital lifestyle providers, and the first thing you said was simplification, where you take costs out of the system. And so when I hear about cost being taken out of the system, there is a lot of talk about network function virtualization, or becoming a software telco, as I like to call it, where a lot of this proprietary custom technology moves to off-the-shelf servers. Is that an area where you're seeing growth for your company as well?
Absolutely. So it's almost a necessity for us. So when you talk about the 4 pillars and simplify being the first pillar to cost reduce, one of the ways we do cost reduction is product simplification and network simplification, right? And product simplification we can do today, because rather than supplying somebody a standalone MMSC or a standalone voicemail or a visual voicemail system or a video mail system or a video messaging system, we are creating a virtualized infrastructure that on demand can supply you 5 or 6 use cases. So if someone came to you and said all they did was they took a product and they coded it to run on VMware, I would say that doesn't give you real cost savings.
Right.
But when you talk about 5 products being merged and on demand switching between them, now you're getting some benefit of virtualization. And then if you take it one more step forward and say 12, 13, 5 countries or 5 different OpCo networks belonging to the same entity, when they start to tap into one network, now you're really getting the benefit of cloud savings. So you're really taking the benefit of NFV one more step forward.
Now, we've talked before about how you've seen, or the industry has seen, the curve of voice go up and then come back down to some degree, and then data start to go up and then come back down. And this next era, according to some analysts, is this, like you mentioned, digital lifestyle services world where companies will offer consumers different packages and different types of services. And I'm curious, so let's try to take that out, because it's tough to even look out 1 year. But if we were to look out 5 years, 10 years, how do you see that market evolving, and where will your company fit in?
So the fourth wave, or the digital services wave, you're correct, right? I mean, if Gartner predicts that in 2017, which is not too far away, 17% of the carrier top line revenues would be attributable to digital services. And digital services is really nothing but an end-to-end vertical integration of a high-value use case that underlying may use messaging, that may underlying use voice. But what it does is, because it's vertically integrated, there is a lot of high value on top that the carrier begins to participate in. So 17% of an SP top line is a lot of TAM, is a lot of addressable market. If you just took the top 50 carriers as an example, that number alone would translate to about $250 billion for that 1 year. So it's a large market that we are tapping into. And from our perspective, we were the leaders in the first couple of curves, the voice and the messaging curves. We are taking part in the data curve, which sort of, you could argue that's sort of halfway through. And digital services curve, which is just beginning, which is a very large, it's $500 billion to about $1 trillion of opportunity. We expect to translate our incumbency at all the SPs and move them along into the fourth wave. So we expect to take leadership in the fourth wave as well.
So I just want to put some description around this for the viewer. Mm-hmm. An example of this digital lifestyle service would be that I have a baby boomer parent or two parents, and I'm concerned about them, and I can't afford to put them in, let's say, a nursing home or a home assisted living or have someone in their home every day. But what I can't afford is to pay my carrier X number of dollars a month and have the fitness tracker connect up to the network and notify me via SMS if there's something that happens that's unusual. For example, if there's no movement on the fitness tracker after 10 a.m. or 9 a.m., or there's a lot of movement after 10 p.m. or whatever the case may be, or having connected vehicles where the vehicles are communicating, or something where the carrier provides sensors within the vehicle, or some kind of IoT, M2M, layer above managing all of those devices and providing a service, let's say for smart farming or anything like that.
Absolutely. So the examples you took are sort of right on, and we have some large North American carriers already thinking about those examples and already bringing those solutions to the market, because today the average household, the number of sensors inside a household is increasing. People are wearing trackable wearable devices. So that example is a perfect one where, rather than pay $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a monthly basis for assisted living, could somebody increase another few years of their parents' life inside their home where they're much more comfortable, but at the same time, in a non-intrusive way, monitor their health, monitor their support. And also, not only the baby boomer monitoring the parents, but the parents having convenience of unlocking the door from their tablet or smartphone, seeing who is out there, or being able to for example, follow through their drug regimen, whatever they have to take on given times of day, because something reminds them, and doing auto refills on prescriptions because the bottle has an RFID tag, and now you know that this bottle is running out of prescriptions. So there is a lot of things that can be automated and make our digital life, so much more simpler. So that's a great example.
And your company obviously benefits if the communication service provider, who now is no longer just communications or a service provider, becomes the hub of the next generation of services. Because, as you mentioned, when Nest and Mercedes can go out and do a deal together, that means that the service provider potentially lost an opportunity to insert themselves in the center and try to add value with the consumer relationships that they already have. Perhaps strike a deal with Nest and with Honeywell, with Mercedes and BMW, as opposed to just one-to-one relationships.
You're absolutely right. So the idea is for service providers to be able to wake up and realize that, if they don't do it, the subscribers are already beginning to lead digital lifestyles. Question is, how can they quickly react and take part in our digital lifestyles today? And I think that's really our mission. That's who we are behind. And our hope is to help the CSPs both get educated and begin to offer services that include messaging, that include voice, that includes these communication technologies, but then use it for a higher purpose. It's a vertically integrated use case. And I think that's where they create a lot of value for themselves. And clearly it benefits us because our technology is then used more and more.
Of course, this is a partnership. So, if we go back a number of years, we saw this huge spike in SMS and MMS, and we saw ringtones and ringback tones.
Yes.
There's a lot of money in these markets that if you go early on, most of the analysts probably way underestimated the amount of revenue in each of these markets. And so what we're saying here is there's the potential now for maybe 100, 150, 200 new markets, maybe more. We don't know. Some of these are going to be really, really large, and the carrier could play a huge role, or they could not play a huge role if they don't get in early enough. Right? That's what we're saying?
Yes, absolutely. We think this is the right time for this is the beginning of the fourth wave. And this is the right time for carriers to structure and get organized around these end-to-end use cases.
Be flexible, be nimble, and and then really be more...
Really think out of the box.
And be marketing driven.
Exactly.
I hate to... I mean, it's really what we're talking about here is think of these ideas and then try to put the pieces together and then package it and hopefully get these things to stick. And if they set the network up correctly, it'll be less expensive to do these trials.
If they set their networks up correctly, it could be two guys in the garage who will think of the next intelligent use case. The SP themselves don't even have to think about what will be the next thing that will stick with the public, as long as they are part of the value chain and they can monetize their network. And I think that's what we're talking about is that nimbleness, taking part in the digital economy.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for your time. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Rich. Pleasure.